My name is George Plaep, born in 1909, October 17th.
Do you remember the year when you started school?
And started school in 1914 at the age of 5. I didn't. Well, we had moved from Blackridge to Schofield in 1914 in March. And I was 5 years old then. And I started grade school in September.
Do you remember the first day you went in school?
Not really.
Yeah.
Okay. I know I couldn't speak English yet. We all spoke German at home at that time. But I knew yes and no and thank you and a few cuss words, as you can imagine. But I understood it pretty well, but I had a little trouble talking. They were building the railroad then at that time yet, and there were quite a few people living around there in little houses around the country, and so they'd be near their work. And there's quite a few kids in school the first year or two that I was there. One-room schoolhouse, one teacher, and a big bell up in the belfry, and there must have been at least 20 kids there. She had her hands full, that teacher, I believe. Some pretty grown-up boys, too. But discipline was pretty good. I do remember one incident in my first year at school. It was Halloween, and we played tricks on, as a matter of course, I guess. I'd never heard of it, but I know I was the first one in the schoolhouse the day after Halloween, and everything loose in that schoolhouse was hanging from the ceiling. The boys had gotten in there after the teacher had left and bored little holes through the ceiling and let down a string, and they had everything loose. And I know during the day that they had one of those round world globes, and the string from that thing came down to bang and just about hit one of the kids in these places there. I know that later on in the second and third grades, that after the railroad was built, a lot of the people moved out of there. We were about the only family in that school outside of, let's see, there was one girl I started with, Maxine Zachary, lived above us. The folks' name was Walker, and she was one of the girls who was married to this Zachary, and that was a red-headed gal, a little bit spoiled, and I also graduated from high school with her, but in between I didn't see much of her.
Well, you had several sisters.
Yes.
Do you think that made it easier if you got along with girls, or did you have more fun with the boys? And do you think having sisters helped you with girls?
I don't want to answer. We've all got along quite well.
Yeah.
My oldest sister and I were very close, but my next sister below her, she was a little meanie. We always tattled on us when we got doing something we shouldn't have, you know. We kind of resented her at times, maybe.
Well, did you bribe her? Did you try buying her off? Or
no.
Did you threaten her, or just put up with her?
We just put up with it. Stayed out of her way mostly. And she was really good. And then there was the other, Walter, which was next, and Gertrude, and just about 4 of us went to school there. I went up through the grades. It was the last year in the 8th grade, and I think the whole family was going to school except my youngest brother and sister. There were 7 of us altogether, so 5 of us were in that school. And then there was a family lived down below, the Henderson boys. There was 3 of them, but there were 3 of those going to school there, but the oldest girl was 16. She died of appendicitis they had at that time, some complication. We lost her. 2 boys did. Roy Henderson had a store in Leesport for years. He just sold out here a couple of years ago. And the oldest boy, Howard, I don't know what happened to him. He's worked on the ranch for his dad for a little while. He was in 8th grade when I was in the 1st grade.
Excuse me, but you said now when you started you didn't understand English at all.
No.
How long was it when you were in school before you began to understand what the teachers were saying and pretty well picking up what is in the books? Was that the first year or the second or third year? Or would you say within the first year you began to understand English pretty well and enough to get along?
Yes, at that age.
I think they learn very quickly. Children learn
very fast.
Yes.
I can give you an illustration.
Yes.
After we moved to Bear Creek, or Biddle Creek out here, Dad had a family come over in 25, a man and his wife and a little girl. She was about 6 years old, just about 1st grade. In 2 days, she knew some English words. In a week, she was talking English.
Right, translating for the family, probably.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I don't know how children learn so fast.
Yeah,
I think they do.
and as soon as I started the 1st grade, Alice picked it up from me. And she started the next year. She was a year behind me, I think.
Yeah.
And Dad and Mother encouraged us to speak English at home. Mother wanted to learn English especially. And that's in contrast to my Dad's other brothers. They insisted on speaking German when they came home. And their kids all speak fluent German and English too. I can't understand it. It's hard for me to understand anymore or speak it. I know a few words, but at that early age you forget it pretty.
Who were some of the boys who were your friends?
Well, the family below, the Hendersons, there were the 3 I said, the girl died, and Roy was a year ahead of me in school, and there was another boy from up by the tunnel there, Sprague. There was quite a family of them. He was going to school there. He had Stephen Sprague. And them 2 boys, they made life miserable for me, I remember. But Howard Henderson, the oldest boy in the 8th grade, he'd stand up for me. All I had to do was yell for him, and then he'd go chase him off. So,
did you boys have things you got together and play? Did you go fishing together? Or did you all work so hard after school you really didn't have time to do things sometimes?
As soon as school was out, I had to work on the ranch. Dad started me out when I was 5 years old. I was 6 years old with my cane. I had to lead the horse to pull the hay up into the barn and hoe corn or whatever. All those kids, he put us to work pretty early. He always let us have Sundays off, and during that time, occasionally during the summer months, there'd be itinerant preachers come around and they'd have Sunday services in the mornings, but that was only during the summer and the better weather. In the winter, there's of course school, of course, but it was hard to get around muddy roads. There were no cars or gravel roads those days. And during my school days there, there was a family who lived down there halfway to Reedsport. They rode a horse to school 4 miles every day. 3 of them, the Tabor girls, Helen and Marie. And there were 2 boys, Robert and Jack. And Jack was just a baby. He didn't go to school there at all, I don't think. I met him later. Jack was a fisherman out of here for a while. But I don't know what happened to him. He got in trouble. Robert was drowned in the river Roseburg in his later years. And the girls were married. The oldest girl, I had a little crush on her.
What did she look like? Do you remember what she looked like?
Oh, I thought she was quite a good-looking girl, but I heard others mention that she did.
Look good to you?
Yeah, it looked good to me, but not to others.
Was she a blonde girl or brunette?
She was a blonde.
Yeah.
Nice girl. They were, whole family, quite well behaved.
Yeah. Did she like you, do you think?
Well, we were pretty quiet.
Or did you ever get close enough to find out?
No, not really. I think she liked our company.
Yeah.
And she was in the same grade as my sister Alice. They got along good, and even after they were both married, they wrote back and forth to each other for a while. But she finally, let's see, it was just a year after I got out of high school. She was married, and well, I blew that bubble. So, let's see. I can't think much of my grade school days. I know they were still building the railroad in the first year, and they had the track in. Of course, they had the pile driver come along and drive all the piling for the bridges, little short bridges here and there that cross the creek so many places. And the whole crew went up to the camp at the tunnel for lunch. Us kids, we only lived to jump from the schoolhouse there. We went home for lunch too. Us boys would go down to, they had a speeder down there, the little pump car. We would set it on the track and run back and forth on the railroad track till we heard the train to whistle. From the train, the crew coming back to work, and then we'd quick shut it off the tracks and run back up to the schoolhouse. And one winter, the schoolhouse sat right up on a hill, just right above the railroad track. There was a cut there through the point. One year, winter, we had snow, and we'd get up there during recess or noon hours, and not noon hours, but whenever they were working down below there, and throw snowballs at mostly Mexicans working on the railroad. And or if the train went by, we'd try to throw snowballs down the chimney of the train. Went underneath. And such foolish things as that. But we were pretty well behaved kids, as a rule. Our family was, because all the teacher had to do if one of us misbehaved was send a note home to Dad, and boy,
that was it.
He didn't spare the rod. Especially on us older ones, we were pretty well behaved. We had storms every winter. We'd have high water, and then the creek would overflow, and the whole bottom would be covered. And Dad was all smiles when we got high water like that, because after it went down, you could go out and you could see the dirt, the mud that it was carried down, and
it renewed your entire,
bottom.
Renewed your entire soil, didn't it?
Yes, just like fertilizer. Crop of hay next year.
Was your house close enough to the river that it was dangerous during floods, or were you up high enough so that didn't?
Schofield Creek up there at the lower end of our place was just ahead of tide water. And up above, it wasn't a very large creek. We went up there 5-6 miles more, but we had trouble finding a swimming hole in the summer to deep enough to swim in. Another thing I wanted to bring up, when I was about 20 months old, I fell into playing with a cat. I backed into a tub of boiling hot clothes that had just been set off of the stove.
Yeah.
And it burned my whole side here. Mother and Dad were out in the barn milking, and my grandma was staying with them then, and she'd just taken this tub of clothes off of the stove. They used to do that those days, boil their clothes, and set it on the floor, and I backed into that, and instead of taking the clothes off, my grandma ran out to the barn, called Mother, and by the time she got back, Mother peeled my shirt off, while half of the skin came with it. And I was pretty
Do you still have trouble from those severe scars?
No, not anymore, but I know it itched like the dickens when I was a kid, and the bleed did all, I'd scratch it, very thin skin, and all up and down my side here when I was a kid, and one got a breathing hard while they were adhesions there in the turkey when you breathe. But it doesn't bother me anymore now. But I can't remember, but I remember how it itched for years after.
How old were you when that happened?
I was
a
little bit under 2 years old. I was born in October, and that happened in July or August in the summer. My sister was already there, so I was a year and a half, year 3/4 old.
You really remember that?
I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
Getting down.
Yeah.
And my sister was there, but I know there's an item in one of our Bibles at home that Mother had. How they sat up with me at nights for lost a lot of sleep trying to keep me calm.